All right, welcome everybody. We still have a few folks starting to arrive and continuing to come in, but we're going to get started anyway. Welcome to Marketing Optimization New Normal. It's sponsored by Sigmoid. My name is Ken Mallon, and I'm the president of Mallon Advisory Services, and I'll be moderating the panel today. Now, before I introduce an amazing set of speakers, and just glancing around, I can see a number of them even pulled out their collared shirts. And Stephen, back of the closet for the jacket. Nice job there, Stephen. Now, this is going to be an interactive session. We're going to have polls for you to participate in, and I'm going to invite the audience to submit questions as well. And this webinar is being recorded, and so it's going to be available to all the participants afterwards. And at the end of the session, I'm going to ask folks to just stick around for a couple minutes and kindly complete a survey to help us continuously improve the webinars. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers, and I'm going to kick things off with Ryan. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Ryan King. I am the managing director of the data services organization at Samba TV. We help power our clients with either cross-platform insights or data where clients can sort of activate on their own with our unique data set.
Awesome to have you here, Ryan. Obviously, TV data is super hot during the pandemic. Next introductions, let me turn it over to Stephen.
Hi, Stephen Millman. I'm Senior Vice President for Global Research and Operations at Dynata, measuring the life cycle of the ad campaign. I'm also a member of the Board of Trustees for the Advertising Research Foundation, the ARF.
Pleasure to have you, Stephen. Longtime industry guru. Couldn't think of anybody better to have on this kind of panel. Jeevan, hand it over to you. Jeevan from Zynga, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeevan, Director of Data Science and Analytics at Zynga. At Zynga, I've led data science for numerous gaming franchises such as Zynga Poker and Words with Friends, to name a couple. And more recently, I co-founded Zynga's in-house DSP, where we focused on programmatic user acquisition for Zynga studios through the application of machine learning.
Jeevan, so exciting to have someone from Zynga on the panel today. It's an exciting gaming company, so I'm looking forward to hearing your insights. Finally, turn it over to Rahul from Sigmoid. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Rahul Kumar Singh, co-founder and chief analytics officer in Sigmoid. In Sigmoid, we help solve business problems using machine learning, AI, and big data technologies. We work with several Fortune 1000 companies across sectors, such as retail, CPG, pharma, gaming, edtech, and so on.
Fantastic to have Sigmoid's co-founder Rahul here, and thanks again for sponsoring this webinar. Now, before we get into questions, we're going to go to a poll. I said this is going to be interactive, so go ahead, audience. I've got a quick poll here. Now that the pandemic is waning, how is your market investment changing? Is it lower than pre-pandemic levels? Back to pre-pandemic levels, higher than pre-pandemic levels? And if you're not on the side of the business where you do invest, what are you observing if you're kind of on the publisher side or agencies, et cetera? Polls are coming in. I know we have a lot more participants here today, so me being a statistician, I want to see those sample sizes go up. So keep them coming in, guys. All right, I'm going to end this poll and see what we've got. Right, it looks like it's pretty balanced. I mean, some are saying lower, some are saying back to pre-pandemic levels, some are saying higher. Yeah, pretty balanced in the 30s across the board. Any of our panelists want to make a comment? Does this seem out of whack to you?
Yeah, it does seem a little odd. Being in the advertising measuring business, we have seen a real uptick in spend and measurement.
Sure.
But maybe that's just the folks we're measuring.
Right. Yeah. All right. Now let's kick off some questions. Now, this is really about marketing optimization, and I always hear people talk about real time. Real time. That's like the eye candy everybody wants, right? People ask for real time, but are we there now? And really, how important is it? Maybe start it off with you, Ryan. Is real time really real time? Do people need second by second data? What is the right cadence, and where are we from a technical standpoint?
Well, I guess when you talk about sort of attribution work, real time to me would be next day or 2 to 3 day delay, because there's a lot of data that you need to sort of resolve before you make those decisions and create an insight. If you're really doing real time within seconds type of measurement, you probably are siding more with last click attribution. And to me, might be valuable to some areas, but you're not really understanding the full breadth of your campaign if you are relying on just a last touch point for that conversion. So I do think we're there. I just think it, like, real time is a little overused term, and it's really about, like, as long as you can resolve next day within a week, you're in a good spot to make some pretty key decisions to change your media optimization plans.
Yeah, let me just ask you, Stephen, to take this as well, because you work with a lot of different industries. You're interacting with different kinds of customers, and you're probably seeing a lot of different ways that people think of real time. What's your answer to this? Is it here, and is it necessary?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, real time has never been here, and at the same time, it's been here for a while. So real time, what it really means to most people is, do I get the data fast enough for it to be useful? And it depends on what you're doing and whether the technology can catch up. If you are doing audience validation and you want to do quote unquote real-time optimization with respect to fraud, with respect to in-target delivery, with respect to viewability, all things that are important to do, you're going to get those on about a 24-hour delay, generally speaking. And that's pretty darn good for that kind of work. When you're looking at survey work coming in and you're measuring, brand health, or you're measuring a campaign in field, those really should never show up in real time. They should go through a cleaning process first. Usually those are nightly processes. When you're dealing with linear television, there's usually a delay of, depending on where you're getting it from, several days to potentially 2 to 3 weeks before you're getting your data back. And so, as with all things, the question is are the data coming back fast enough for me to use to make the business decisions I need to make? And if they are, that's real enough.
Right, yeah, I mean, you're really talking about, from the customer perspective, what does real time mean, and how often do they really need things? Let me turn it over to Jeevan and Rahul, getting a little bit more on the technical side. What are the technical challenges standing in the way of marketing optimization? Because at the end of the day, marketer wants to get the right message in front of the right person at the right time. How do you do that? What are some of the challenges in terms of collecting data, cleaning data, providing it into the systems as needed to make decisions? I'll start with you, Rahul.
Yeah, so primarily what we have seen is that this challenges are different in different industries, and I think most amount of cases what we have seen is it's about connecting different data sets which are stored in different technologies with different companies. So the same organization is working across multiple providers, and that data is actually resides in different silos, and in some cases very large amount of data. So they don't even start collecting it and know the value of the value of getting very granular amount of data accessed, right? So from a technology perspective, it could be 3 to 6 months kind of a work to get value out of the data, but gathering the data and sort of storing a year worth or 2 year worth of data is, I think, that takes the most amount of effort, and that requires sort of more proactiveness in that sense. So on the technology side, I don't see a lot of challenges at this point on at least on an analytics side and optimization side.
Right, we'll get into later some of the challenges around investment. We'll talk later about, are people investing enough? Because it sounds like you're saying, hey, as long as you invest, technologies are there to make this happen. Let me turn it over to you, Jeevan, because Zynga is in a unique situation, because often you're seeing not just the ad exposure, but you're seeing things all the way through to people downloading games and playing games and so forth. What, if any, technical challenges are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with Rahul. Just merging data from different sources is a big challenge, reporting and attribution, for example. And not only that, I mean, owing to Apple's changes to attribution methodology for iOS, it kind of complicates situations a lot more. Although in theory, it seems like for app marketers, you're getting data from the app, from MMP and ad networks, and you should be able to ideally kind of make like a simple data set that kind of merges all three. But it's hardly it's actually it's a really tough job to actually make sure that your data is aligned and available at the lowest granularity or regularly and consistently error-free. It's kind of actually like a big challenge. And the math and the modeling itself is relatively straightforward, but just making sure that we have accurate data across all channels, across early funnel and late funnel metrics and engagement metrics is a challenge, just because of the numerous number of kind of players involved in actually delivering the data. So yeah, it's actually kind of a major challenge.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, just a quick follow-up question to you, Jeevan, is you're talking about having to balance between data explosion and granularity. You want to get granular, but at the same time, if you get twice as granular, all of a sudden you have twice as many data points. So my guess is this is a big part of it too, is sort of finding your way. Where's that happy middle ground?
Yeah, very much. So we want to kind of support multiple types of stakeholders. Executives who just want the high level versus user acquisition managers who are kind of really fighting up battles with every dollar that they are spending, to actually give them all the tools that they need to actually so that they could actually improve their campaign performance. Now, I mean, some of these goals are orthogonal, and to actually, if you kind of increase the granularity too much, it's just hard to manage data effectively even for the data engineering team. So we end up actually delivering multiple sets of data sets, and that creates a new type of challenge that you have to keep it consistent. So it is it's an important balance to strike and set kind of expectations across stakeholders to actually make sure it's that their basic expectations are satisfied, and they have all the tools that they need to actually do their job.
A quick reminder to our audience, this is going to be interactive. We have another poll coming up soon. And if you have questions, just go ahead and ask them. I'll pick them up on the fly and direct them to whoever wants to take it. Next question for you, Ryan. Got a pretty big listening audience here today, and some of them might be wondering, should I get involved in in-flight optimization? Some insight, which industries do you think are best suited for this, and or what kind of situations? Are there certain targeting situations? Is it CPG? Is it retail? Is it TV? Where do you see in-flight optimization making the most sense?
I mean, obviously, a big industry for this is the direct response campaigns, where they're, asking to have an immediate reaction post some sort of messaging touch point that has happened to them. So I would say that's always going to be a big driver of real-time optimization tools and strategies. And what I hope, though, is that the tools inform on more than just what just recently happened, and they're actually stitching together, because even though a campaign might be asking somebody to immediately purchase or download an app, that doesn't mean they're going to do it. They might do it on the 5th or 6th impression. And so you're going to want to have a graphing solution that not only can tell you what that last touch point was for a conversion, but also stitch together what had happened prior to make that the conversion point of interest. Because the last thing you want to do is cut out those other touch points that helped drive that final touch point to the conversion. So I would say direct response, but more and more, I think those longer term investment type of products are very important to have that. And you never know when somebody's going to go to a grocery store. So CPG brands,
That's
still
right.
very important, because you want to be top of mind when somebody does go to that grocery store, so that they know they have that brand in mind when they hit the shelves.
And I think, so you're really talking about is if you're measuring something you can see immediately. And I think Stephen alluded to this a little bit earlier, looking at things like fraud or audience metrics or direct response, something you can see right away, you can go ahead and optimize on that. If it's something where you need to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks to see if somebody purchases something, then obviously you can't do as much in-flight optimization. You want to add any more color there, Stephen?
No, I mean, I think you're right. One of the big things is the sales cycle. People buy Snickers bars every day. They're going to buy sneakers every few months. They're going to buy a car every few years. So you do want to ping it. You want to pin it to that kind of thing. I think the other thing to just keep in mind is the length of the campaign. If you're running a short focused campaign, in-flight optimization is never going to be that important because there's no opportunity to make meaningful change. When you're running long-term campaigns, regardless of the brand, where in particular where you either have a very diverse set of publishers where you're dropping this, different channels, et cetera, gives you a lot of opportunities to optimize. And then also when you're trying to move the needle on something that is not relatable to an event. So if I'm running an awareness campaign, for example, that's a really good place to optimize.
All right, we're going to ask one more quick question, and then we're going to have our second poll. So get your fingers on the keyboards, audience. The poll is going to be coming up. You know what? We haven't talked about privacy yet. We're talking about targeting. We're talking about measurement. We're talking about optimization. Privacy landscape has been changing, right? And Rahul, I know you've been a little bit in the thick of this because companies are coming to Sigmoid saying, hey, we got to get ready for the new normal. We have to understand this better. Can you give us some insight? What role does privacy play these days in marketing optimization?
Yeah, so it's different in different industries. So let me take two examples. So in one of the examples, when we have customer data. So for customer data, typically we have two kind of complexity. One complexity is what kind of optimization need we have, and for that, what information would be most relevant that can make your messaging most relevant to that particular customer. The second aspect is identity across all data sources, which is slowly reducing, right? And companies are trying to separate out digital identity than the real world identity. I think that is one primary focus, but that is very hard problem. As you get more information across a lot of sources, it becomes harder and harder to prevent privacy. So that is one side of the picture when we have customer data available to that industry. And that there is another side of spectrum, as we talked about brands and CPG industry, where customer data does not exist. And if that does not exist, then it becomes very hard to do attribution on sales and actual returns. And we solve that problem by capturing data from ad tech providers, and we make sure that they get faster in-flight optimizations, and technology is able to actually achieve a good amount of feedback very fast. Now, taking action on a feedback is one aspect, but another aspect is actually building that system that can do that. So privacy is not a problem in those cases in CPG industry, but it is very much a significant focus for the industry. As an example, retail, gaming, and similar others.
Thanks, that makes a lot of sense. We do have a question coming in from the audience, but before we go there, let's do another poll. Oops, this is the old one. Gotta go to the second poll. Which I'm having trouble launching. I'm going to need help from our team to go to the second poll. There we go. What type of analytics approach drives your marketing campaigns? Right, because you've got descriptive analytics, kind of describing what's going on. You got diagnostics, telling you what worked, what didn't. Predictive things, we really want to understand what's likely to happen. Then you got the prescriptive, which is really about telling you what you should do. And results are coming in. I know we have over 80 participants, so let's get these sample sizes up. We got some numbers coming in here. I'll give it another 10 seconds and end the poll and see what we've got. Diagnostic analytics currently in the lead at 44%. All right, we're going to end the polling. Take a look. Yeah, descriptive. My sense is that a lot of what we do is descriptive. And so it's a little surprising to me, at least, that one's low. Diagnostics are obviously critically important. Prediction is really about the future. And I think we'll get into a little bit later, talking more about AI and machine learning. Any reaction from the panelists on what you see here?
Pretty par for the course. When you look at UA managers and UA kind of function at Zynga, I think it's important to look at what's working versus not working and actually make decisions. So I feel like it's fair.
Yeah, pretty par for the course, I guess. Again, I mean, I'm used to seeing people probably gravitating more to descriptive things, but I like that people are thinking more about other ways to use it. Thinking outside the box. So Ryan, I'm gonna next turn to innovation. And I know you've led innovation teams before. You and I have worked on patents before, so a lot of fun innovation has occurred. Is there any innovation going on now in marketing optimization? And if so, what is it?
I think for the past few years, and you were part of this for a bit too, is the bringing scalable TV data into the digital world has really, I think, set the marketing optimization into a new phase. Because before, you'd have to do everything in silos. You'd have to measure TV in a silo, and you'd measure digital in a silo. And now there's multiple companies out there, Samba being one of them, that can combine this all into one single data source and actually inform on key areas that have only been guesses or a modeled approach in the past. So I would say the proliferation of scalable TV data that is robust and able to basically match what digital has been doing for almost 2 decades.
I remember thinking about this over a decade ago and thinking, why can't TV just be like online, where you have data on a per device basis that you can use for analytics? And now we have it, right? We have it at scale.
You and I sat in a conference room talking about this when we were at Ipsos, and when Samba TV data came to market, we were like, we think we could use this in a survey-based platform.
Yeah, and in fact, we're doing this in concert with Samba right now, doing combined digital, TV, and other stuff tied back to panelists.
Yeah, go ahead and say more about that, Stephen, because folks in the audience may be interested, like how two companies here working together on something that brings value to customers. How are you doing that exactly? What is it?
Well, I mean, we each bring strengths. So Samba does a great job at bringing in TV data, bringing it in accurately, bringing it in fast. We do a great job at building large, fully opted in, privacy compliant, engaged panelists that we can track for, let's say, for digital as well and other things. And we can tie those two together in a privacy centric, fully permissioned basis and build measurement across multiple channels using the combination of what we bring to the table.
Okay, so it sounds like Samba's providing the exposure data and Dynata's providing some of this outcome information, and you're bringing that together to help marketers optimize and measure campaigns.
And just to add on for Stephen there too, is it's great because we provide that passive data source to them so they can focus in on the actual core area, and that's asking the consumers their thoughts on a brand.
Yeah.
Another big piece of innovation and sort of the eye candy of the industry is machine learning and AI. It seems like you can't walk anywhere for hearing about AI, whether it's in movies, whether it's in the news, whether it's in the industry. Talk a little bit, I'll start with you, Jeevan. Is there a role, is AI here? Are we just talking about it, or is it actually happening? To what extent is machine learning playing a role in optimizing campaigns?
So, Google Universal App Campaigns, Facebook automated app ads are great examples of ML being applied to marketing optimization, at least within apps. And that's the Google UAC campaigns, create ads, places them on appropriate channel, and then manages the budget and bids to actually get to an advertised goal. That's as complete as an application of ML as it can be to actually, it's just, turnkey, in fact, where you put in your creatives, put in your taglines, and then you put in your budget and set your goal, that's it. So, I mean, a lot of the UA managers kind of, love that they don't have to worry about it. But can humans outperform that? That's a different question. But, if you ask me if ML and AI are here, yeah, they are definitely here. All of Google's app campaigns go through Google UHC. That means a large portion of app advertising budget definitely in the world definitely goes through those things. And over the years, performance marketing has become more and more programmatic, meaning brands, apps, games are bidding on ad exchanges directly. Even at Zynga, I think we are kind of at the initial stages of experiment of actually running our own in-house DSP. We're able to kind of demonstrate kind of improvements in CTRs and IPMs, right? So I feel like ML is definitely necessary in the case where you're seeing hundreds of features that we see in the bid requests that we kind of want to optimize for. And the only way we're able to link a bid price to a long-term user LTV will be through kind of machine learning. So I feel like in the future we should expect more and more spend to go through ML and AI. And there are a lot of data scientists who are kind of actually like moving their kind of talents to this field. So I feel like overall, we'd see definitely more and more brands and apps and games really spending more dollars, through machine learning and AI.
Thanks, Jeevan. Now, just for our audience members, like I'm from Iowa, so I got to keep things simple. Let me just sort of break this down. I'll hand it over to Rahul to correct me if I'm wrong. When I think about the potential ways machine learning AI can be used, like you got the bid itself. How much should I bid on an impression? Could be using AI or machine learning. The other thing could be the creation of the targeting list using machine learning. And then there's also the learning aspect, the feedback loop. Am I thinking about that correctly, or are there other aspects that are involved, Rahul?
You are, I think, absolutely right. So primarily, there are different parts of the funnel, and in different parts, AI and machine learning is being used in different ways. So there are some industries, digital industries, which complete funnel is online, and you are also able to track it in different part of the funnel. So there, the entire pipeline could be automated, and we have seen the end-to-end, even ROIs are being optimized. I think Jeevan's industry is one of that example, gaming, because a lot of things are online. It's hard to connect everything, but it is definitely possible and feasible to do it. In a lot of industries, it is hard to get to the final sales, but then there are early stage metrics like, as Jeevan talked about, CTR is one of them, although it doesn't directly correlate with sales. But I think reach and frequency are different ways companies are trying to measure or build fast KPI targets, in a sense, to optimize based on artificial intelligence. And when it comes to direct like sales attribution, then building those reports require a lot of machine learning and AI application, because that is also a very hard problem to solve. Although the entire optimization funnel is still not given to technology in a sense, because the messaging which has to be given to the customer, what kind of campaigns, what kind of brand image you are trying to build. So there are a lot of aspects in marketing which is still not completely governed by AI, and a lot of human intervention and marketers' knowledge is involved there. But significant part is on AI these days.
I see. So one of the things that you made me think of is it might even make sense to start by optimizing on the things that you see quickly, such as fraud metrics, viewability, things like that. And then as you collect more data and the campaign continues, then you're maybe optimizing on things like conversion. I see Steve raised his hand. Did you want to address this as well?
I was just going to say very briefly, the folks on the call today are doing some pretty amazing things with machine learning and AI, but I would caution people on the buyer side of this equation. Take a look under the hood, make sure that what they're doing is actually AI. A lot of what I've seen in the industry lately are simple statistical analyses being dressed up and being called AI. And those may be perfectly functional for what you need, but do take some care. There's a lot of bad labeling happening right now.
That's a great advice, Stephen. And you mentioned the audience. We do have a couple of questions. One from anonymous attendee asks, what are the biggest audience targeting and performance measurement challenges? Who wants to take this?
I can jump in. I think as an app marketer, or as Zynga as a big app marketer, the biggest audience challenge is what everybody's heard, which is basically Apple, kind of withdrawing, or at least through that privacy, requirements, actually, reducing the number of features available or kind of filters available to actually do targeting. And then even on the performance measurement side, there's not an easy way to kind of differentiate between organic and installed, kind of paid traffic. So as a result, I think it's become much more harder to actually measure deeper funnel metrics when it actually comes to performance marketing and measurement. So I feel like that's kind of a challenge that the whole industry is facing within the app world, the app marketing kind of world. And everybody is coming to terms with it, finding what the new normal is, so to speak, when it comes to what these new targeting metrics exist, or what are the new targeting levels on iOS. I feel like that's kind of that's a big challenge within the app marketing world.
Yeah, I would add to that fraud. Fraud is a huge issue in terms of targeting and delivery. It gets more and more clever every day, and it's a lot more than most people think.
Yeah, and I would say one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is advertisers actually being able to address audiences, because now it's getting harder and harder to expose consumers, specifically on TV, with the changing viewership habits. I think everybody is very aware of the OTT CTV increase in impressions and CPMs. Because of the addressability of it, it's harder and harder to find people on TV and to expose the right people and to know where they're watching that content.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And I'm going to go ahead and go with another question. I got a great question coming in, actually all the way from Chile, South America. This question from Elizabeth Uribe. Thank you, Elizabeth, for asking. She asks, what do you recommend to optimize the effectiveness of marketing for service companies, right? We're talking a lot about product companies where you can quickly buy the product. And she's asking, because she usually heals a topic for product companies, not for service companies. And she goes on to say, I think that product companies are easier because they sell the most, but I think it's a challenge to promote service companies. Anybody have a comment on the service industry and how they can optimize? Is there really any difference at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Rahul.
I think it's important to focus on optimizing the effectiveness of your of attributes when it comes to service companies. So you're obviously looking at the end of the day to convert people to join your service, but I think with service companies, a lot of it has to do with driving awareness and familiarity, so that when a service is needed, you're top of mind, but also that people are thinking of you in the right light. If you're if you're an IT service, do people think of you as enterprise scale, or do people not? Do they think of it as easy, or do they think of it as hard? And those are combining awareness and sort of positive sentiment on the areas that you're trying to promote yourself in the marketplace are really, really good ways to optimize.
You want to add something, Rahul? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in terms of from an analytics perspective, it's about defining the right targets, KPIs, goals, which can be measured, and then defining the entire funnel, and then start to measure it and start to optimize it. Now, some of that could be measured easily, some of that would be more complicated. So primarily it is about defining the goals. If some of those goals could be digital, it is, I think, easiest to measure in that sense. If data is less, there are ways to figure out that. If we are looking at retargeting, we are looking at repetition of the same customer, or maybe improving frequency. So there are a lot of ways, the factors that we have in a marketing funnel, we can optimize it for service companies, primarily depending on exactly what size of services they are selling, and how much smaller or bigger is the audience base, and do they find any audience already prepared, or do they need to do first party audience preparation? So there are a lot of aspects that needs to be taken into account while building such a system, if it is not already there. But I do understand that the more custom you go in a particular direction, you might not get the right kind of data sets pre-built to do that.
Great. Yeah, and let me ask another question to our panelists. We talked about technical obstacles, things that stand in the way, but what about business obstacles when it obstacles when it comes to marketing optimization? I'll give this one to Jeevan because I know that you've got your users, you've got Jeevan, you have Zynga as a marketer. You also have marketers coming to the Zynga platform. And so there's a lot of things to optimize. You want to optimize revenue, but the user experience, you've got some VIP users out there you need to take care of. What kind of business obstacles can sometimes stand in the way?
Yeah, just to take a step back on kind of the gaming business. So an important part of gaming and kind of app marketing is that to recognize that users, there are a portion of users who will continue to engage with your app and continue to contribute to a large part of your revenue, and hence engagement and retention is like an important kind of aspect of kind of gaming. And also that we do invest a lot on kind of acquiring users very kind of very often, and we make kind of pretty large investments. So when we actually think about how do you kind of balance all of this, it's very important that we deliver, like as user acquisition team, we deliver users that are likely to retain in the long term, right? Likely to actually engage with our game. Now, we obviously, because we're kind of trying to do kind of a big, we're trying to take feedback early. We rely on early retention, early engagement metrics to actually drive our user acquisition efforts. But there's obviously going to be a big challenge, a slight difference between early engagement versus long-term engagement. And if you go and speak to our game teams, they do care mostly about long-term engagement. It's kind of, that's what they kind of live and die for. So there's a gap that kind of typically needs to be bridged between early funnel and late funnel. Whereas where do you draw the line? Like where is user acquisition team, marketing teams responsible? So that's a kind of a balancing act too. So every team and every company is different. So it's obviously kind of it's obviously challenging to actually kind of give more kind of ownership, or at least kind of hold our UA team accountable. To what extent do we hold them accountable in terms of kind of long-term user engagement and experience? So it's a balancing act, but it's obviously kind of those are kind of challenges that we deal with on a daily basis.
Thanks, Jeevan. Jeevan, now Stephen. Question over to you. Business obstacles, because when I think sometimes about business obstacles, I think you got all these different teams. You have creative teams, you have brand managers, you have tech platforms. Doesn't this all need to be coordinated in order to do marketing optimization?
Yeah.
And who does that coordination? Am I just making this up, or is that a potential business obstacle here?
It's you're not making it up. I think probably the biggest business challenge, just a sort of a process challenge rather than a technical challenge, is that in a lot of the really large marketing organizations, whether it's an agency or a brand that does it in-house, the team that does the publisher and the channel optimization tends to be the one that will also do measurement. Creative team tends to not be involved in that process, and so you get really valuable learnings out of these kinds of ad lift campaigns that are really relevant to the creative process. But you sometimes find that even when you give someone, for example, a relatively straightforward recommendation, such as your video campaign doesn't mention the brand until second 13 of a 15-second ad, and people can skip it at 5 seconds. You might want to move the branding up to the front to improve brand awareness. And you'll get a response such as, oh, we can't talk to the creative team. I think it's a missed opportunity for sure.
That's right. And there's the creative team that comes up with the idea, and then there's also the technically creative team that does the technical implementation of that creative too, and those folks have to talk together. Let's take a question or two from the audience. An anonymous attendee asks, what is the strategy? Oh, this is a great question. This is about Amazon, right? Amazon is the behemoth sitting there dominating e-commerce. So what is the strategy for retailers who are directly in competition with Amazon? Like, what can they do? Is there anything viable for them without just getting steamrolled by that which is Amazon, who might even be listening to us right now? Who wants to take that?
That's such a hard question. I mean, it's a strategic more than a technical problem
Sure.
that you're facing. And so people who historically have done really well are people who've done really good at direct to consumer marketing and getting people to flow into their own retail space. The problem is that if somebody understands the need for a product type, but you're not top of mind, it leads them to platforms like an Amazon or a Walmart or a Target or whoever. So top of mind awareness, I think, becomes of critical importance if you're going to be trying to sell off Amazon, particularly if you're selling things for which Amazon will have competitive products.
Right, and we shouldn't forget that you can use Amazon to sell your products. So, I mean, Amazon is a frenemy to many retailers. Is it not? Ryan, you have experience here. Isn't that also the case?
I mean, it gives distribution channels to suppliers who may not be able to afford that, so that is great. But I think it's a great question, because I would say like 6-7 years ago, that question might have been about Walmart. Is there anything to stop Walmart from taking over like the consumer packaged goods or that type of retailer situation? And then Amazon came along and just said, no, we're just going to go a completely different distribution method and actually do everything digitally. So I think what that shows, I think, is really about like, do you have something unique, and you better beat Amazon to market with it, because more likely than not, they're probably going to come out with a similar tool, something that is going to rival yours, and they're going to have a much faster distribution.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You were going to say something, Stephen?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. It's not necessarily even Amazon is the problem so much as a platform. So if you do have something that's really unique and fantastic and Amazon doesn't sell it, how long before someone sort of grabs your IP and builds a kind of a cheaper, crappier version and sells it, for example, out of a country, let's say like China. So you've got a lot of challenges. I think top of mind and getting consumers well enough informed about where to go if they want this, that they think of you first. It's, you've got the Jell-O problem. There's lots of gelatins out there, but when someone wants gelatin, what do? They say, oh, I'm going to go get Jell-O. So you want to be Jell-O in this circumstance, and that it's tough to be Jell-O. I think that should be my new catchphrase. It's tough to be Jell-O.
It's tough to be Jell-O. Well, from Jell-O, going to switch gears a little bit and talk about investment. In order to make all this machinery run, companies need to think ahead, right? You can't have the marketers coming to their product and engineering teams and say, hey, we need to measure this. Hey, we need to optimize sort of after the fact. It takes a while to build some of this data infrastructure, collect the data, clean it, and so forth. So let me turn over to you, Rahul. Are you seeing companies making the investments they need with enough lead time in order to have all the machinery in place that's necessary?
So I think they are definitely late. Most of the industry that we are working with, we have seen they should have done this investment sometime back, specifically getting data in place, which takes time to get accumulated so that you are measuring your entire funnel across maybe 1 or 2 years, so that machine learning and AI have enough data to sort of crunch through and make decisions. Whatever type of analytics you want to do, it needs data in that sense. So on that aspect, we see there are gaps, but now due to COVID, a lot of industries, they require and they are sort of starting to invest significantly in building data lakes, merging all sorts of data sets together. Still, I see a gap of building the right data strategy in a lot of companies to identify what data sets they need to go earlier than others while they are started to build this kind of infrastructure, and also at what granularity exactly what sample set you need, and so on and so forth. So I think there are a lot of challenges on that side by not including your analytics and engineering team into the fore of building strategy. But we have seen a lot of recent, I think, activity on that front.
Thank you. Excellent. Audience, thanks for your engagement. Keep your questions coming in. I think we're going to do a couple more questions, have a final poll, and then turn to our panelists to sort of wrap up with any final wisdom before we go. Question here from the audience. Anonymous attendee asks, in situations where customer information is not available, we've kind of addressed this a little bit earlier due to privacy issues, how do marketers find the link between sales and marketing strategies? Like your audience in digital marketing, but we do not know the sale audience. How do you connect the dots? First thing that comes to my mind is you can't get granular. You have to do things on like a fusion level or at some sort of an aggregate, like a zip code or a geographic area or something like that. Am I thinking correctly, or are there other ways to link ad exposure through to sales without having that granular data?
Yeah, and just to step in, I think this is where ID solutions become a very viable option, because there's ID solutions that need deterministic data points to connect them, but that's not what's available in this situation. You're going to need to go to ones that might look at more probabilistic ideas or other match keys that are available: timestamps, IP addresses, user agents, mobile advertising IDs while they're still available, cookie IDs to a certain extent. Like if you can get a big enough data set, you can start matching these sort of disparate data points and actually start linking them together if you have that key record. And it's something that Samba TV specializes in, and it's something that we noticed was a problem because we can't hold PII in our data set. There's actually a law about TV viewership linked to PII data, and so we're always anonymizing our data. And so we've gone out and found GDPR and CCPA compliant ways of graphing sort of these data points together so that we can get to a deterministic data set.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying in the situation where you don't have that granular customer data, the world's not over. There are probabilistic methods that you can bring to bear. And we've gotten this far in the session without talking about iOS 14.5 and cookie deprecation. So I'll ask you, Stephen, how are these recent privacy changes impacting things? Is the world changing?
It's changing slowly, and I think for the better. I think many of you are familiar that last week Google, we're talking about Amazon, I got it on the brain. That's good branding. But last week, Google announced that they are delaying cookie deprecation for 2 years. So cookies won't deprecate at the beginning of 2022. It's now the end of 2023. So we've got 2.5 years now to figure that out. iOS 14 has introduced some interesting problems, in particular, the ability to measure advertising in-app. So for those of you who aren't aware, really quickly, with iOS 14, app tracking is off by default. You have to turn app tracking on, and then on an app-by-app basis, you have to say, yes, it's okay with me that this app tracks my ad, and it's made about half of cell traffic really tough to follow. What I would say is that both this and the previous question sort of rely on the same sets of tools. First, if you can get a large panel, you can get opt-in for these kinds of measurement, then it still works. The difference is that you're no longer looking at census level data. You're using census level data to inform, which is anonymized, to inform data that you have permission to know. There are lots of other opportunities for understanding this. And I think it's probably, some of them are cohort measurement, obfuscation, which is where, this is popular in some of the TV data, where they will introduce 10% of the data as garbage, so you don't know which is real and which isn't, but it's still plenty to get strong signal. But I would say it's probably one of the things we're going to see is that what we used to do to measure all this stuff is going to become really popular again. So what did we used to do? We used to do a lot more copy testing than we do today. Have more confidence that what we're putting out into field will work. That's still really popular in TV and print where the ad buy is really expensive, but you don't see it much in digital. The other thing is market mixed models. We've been using these since the 50s. They've become much, much more sophisticated. They work at the aggregate level. They don't give you the granularity that I think we've become used to, but if you're looking at how did my ad campaign impact my metric of interest, sales for whatever, it's a really good one. So everything old's new again.
I think you're right, Stephen. And, for those of us with a few of the gray beards around, so thanks for being on the panel today. You're right, copy testing, split market designs, market mix modeling, a lot of this stuff that was invented before we had individual level data.
Diff and diff, quasi-experimental design.
Yep. Now I'm going to launch the final poll. If anybody, we are going to be ending shortly, so anybody in the audience has final questions that you want to get before we say goodbye to our panelists, go ahead and submit those. Here's our final poll. What challenges do you face in your efforts to achieve marketing optimization? This is great, right? These are the kind of the 4 things we look at. I think you can choose one of these. Too much darn data, right? Overwhelming data. Don't have access to the right data, right? You might have the exposure data, but you don't have the conversion data, or maybe you have some of the conversion data, but not all of them. Skills shortage. You just don't have enough data engineers, data scientists, and so on to make that happen. Or is it about tools? You don't have the right tools that can surface the information that you need. So we've got some good answers rolling in. I love watching the little bars jump around as the data rolls in. 5 more seconds, 3, 2, 1. We're going to end the polling and let's take a look at some results. Interesting. Access to the right data. I was expecting people to say, and I think this goes to Rahul's comment earlier. Rahul saying, a lot of this is solved. So maybe I'm behind the times and thinking people are overwhelmed with data. Maybe that's starting to taper off a bit. Skill shortage for sure. So maybe people are saying, hey, I need help. Good news for Sigmoid, right? I need help with data engineers. I need help with data scientists, access to the right data. So maybe folks like you, Stephen or Ryan, in the forefront on things like that. So gonna end it there. And gosh, this was really great to be moderating this. I had fantastic panelists. I hope to be on a panel with you soon. And of course, I want to thank the audience. Audience has really hung in there, asked some engaging questions, participated in the polls. Thanks again for joining Marketing Optimization, the New Normal. And special thanks to Sigmoid for hosting this panel and sponsoring it. Thanks again, and we'll see you all in the next webinar.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
And
Take care, everybody.